Hello, everyone. This is Buildershed here, and today we're, you may have heard this. You may have had this question in your head when you thought about going over to Linux. What distro do I choose? I've heard these things called distros. Which one do I choose? Who's that? Like this one. There's this one. There's this one. There's one behind me. There's one in front of me. There's one over here. One over here. There's like 500 distros out there, and you're like, and you're question you're wondering is which one do I choose? Which, and you're always going to hear responses from people, and primarily response such as like giving you like three distros to choose from that they recommend, or here's one distro. Oh, here's these 15 distros you should always stay away from. In like some of the distros here, people commonly try to tell you is perfect for you, Ubuntu and or maybe a derivative of it like Linux Mint, and yet also as well as even sometimes Manjaro. But the truth is, it's more complicated than that. Yeah, there's still distros you should stay away from no matter what until you get enough experience, but there is no solid like straight up distro completely for beginners. Some distros are designed for certain people. Well, there's a lot, and to be honest, there are a lot of distros out there that any beginner can just hop on into. Not just Ubuntu. And yeah, if you don't want to put much time in it, you might as well go with Ubuntu. But it's more complicated than just one or three singular distros. Like, there's more. When you're thinking about a distro to choose, think up here. Think of like what would you use that distro for? What would you like? What would you want to use it? Use it for? Yeah, stuff like that, general stuff. What would you prefer? Would you prefer something stable, or would you prefer the like? Would you prefer something more stable, or would you prefer something more state of the art? Would or overall, would you prefer looks, or would you prefer speed, etc., etc. And there are some things you should probably look into no matter what. Compatibility for one. Unless you're a developer, then you might as well scrap compatibility and try to and focus more on like trying to make your stuff compatible, if you know what I mean. So I think the first area we should start off is what are you using that distro for? What would what are you going to use Linux for primarily? If you're going to use it more for work, you should probably look for first of all like I like first of all the software that comes with it. I wouldn't really consider stability and speed into it as much as maybe as the other one I'm going to talk about. But if you're doing it just for simply work purposes, I would put more focus on security. But Linux overall is already pretty secure by normal standards. Usually, I think the question here is if you're going to use if you're going to use Linux for work, what type of work are you going to use it for? Because different types of jobs can value other more than others. If you're wanting to use it more for graphical design, any distro may work out for that, but some are better than others, obviously. There are some distros with better compatibility with certain tools that you would use for graphic design. Some distros make it easier for you to install graphical drivers on them. Some of them have better. Some distros have better compatibility with the stuff inside this machine. That's another thing to look into. What distros have the best compatibility for what's inside there, which is usually most distros have really good, really don't have much of an issue with what's more likely in your machine. That's overall thing. Another thing if you want to do, if you want to focus on, if you're in an area like graphic design that's more 3D, then I'd say you should probably focus on a distro that has more support for graphical stuff, and graphical like setting graphical stuff is not a complete pain in the rear, if you know what I mean. If you're doing it for just office work, I'd say go with the distro that has like go with the distro that is stable, doesn't have many issues, so your work doesn't get overall screwed up. If you're trying to use it for some like writing stuff, but usually you just put LibreOffice on there on your distro, and by that I just say go for a distro that comes with some good stuff for you, like depending on your job, and with good stability good and good reviews from people in that area. If you're going to use Linux for a corporate, if you're going to use Linux for a more corporate environment, then I'd say go with distros that have really good support. And distros that are pretty reliable, stability. No rolling release. I wouldn't advise rolling release distros at all. Just for the sake that your business doesn't have issues such as your projects going down to the dumpster, if you know what I mean. I'd say go for a distro that, like I said, is pretty stable, not rolling release, and good support. Two distros I can think of that are like this pretty well are practically Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is which is a distro you have to pay quite some money for, but it has, I believe they give you good support, and Ubuntu, which gives you really good support. Well, which has Ask Ubuntu forums, which are pretty good support-wise, and Ubuntu also is pretty stable as well. By that, I advise you to go to the long support releases. Now, the next thing, if you're going to use Linux for more gaming type things, this is where I'd say you should look a bit more into some things. First of all, speed and stability are the ones you should look into the most if we're talking about gaming, as well as compatibility to an extent. There are some you want to like. First of all, you don't want a distro that has poor compatibility. That's literally something no one wants. You want a good distro with good compatibility. But you also don't want a distro that has so much on it that the entire thing's slow, or that comes with a very slow desktop environment and has poor compatibility. You want a distro that's, for one, fast, so your games aren't slow, they're faster. Two, a distro with good support for whatever's in here, and has good support, like gaming wise, has a lot of people recommending it for gaming. Though there's one thing I need to mention here. First of all, there's some misinformation when it comes to distros for gaming on Linux. First of all, people try to go for SteamOS, and a lot of articles like to tell you to go to SteamOS. No! It may be Debian based, but it's not the perfect distro for gaming. In fact, I'd say it's already outdated a bit, and people now tell you to stay away from it, actually. So don't go to SteamOS. Just pick up an Ubuntu based distro or any distro you can find, and that is recommended well for gaming, and then go from there. And don't go for any of those gamer pack distros that basically say that were designed for gaming, or modified a version of Ubuntu that's designed for gaming. No! Don't go for those distros. If there's any distro I'd recommend for gaming, it would be, for one, Manjaro, two, Ubuntu, and three, Pop! OS. Overall, any Ubuntu-based distro I'd recommend, if it's not slow. Though you could really use any distro for gaming overall. There are some distros better for gaming than others. Others, such as Manjaro and Pop! OS as well as Ubuntu. So, basically, the gist of it is, use up here, figure out what you're going to use the Linux for picking out your distro. The next part I want to talk about are distros you should completely stay away from. Distros you should completely stay away from are, first of all, distros that are outdated. They don't get support rarely. 2, distros they don't have good repositories. I'm looking at you, Deepin. And distros that are, as well as distros that are just overall more for an experienced user, such as Gentoo, which I always jokingly compare to be literally the Linux installation equivalent to the 9 Circles of Hell, because it's just that difficult and that long to do. So, but there's also another distro people like to throw in that area, and that's Arch. I'd say Arch is practically the only distro I'd say is in between the distro, like the more experienced and distros and the more newbie friendly distros. People usually don't recommend Arch for new Linux users. And I have a cat wanting in. Well, he's gonna have to wait, of course. So you get the. No, let me just fix it. So you get the basically Gentoo, Slackware. I'm gonna put Slackware over there here for a reason, and Ubuntu, Manjaro here, and you have in the middle Arch Linux. Arch is a minimalist distro. If you're going to install Arch, I'd recommend to have something like this on you, a cell phone, a smartphone preferably, or a laptop if you have one, so you have something you could look at to install Arch. Arch is not as hard. It's command line, and you type in commands to do it, but it's not Gentoo. You don't. There's like 1% of the amount of commands used to install Arch that you would use compared to Gentoo. There's not many commands used to install Arch. You'd have to partition yourself, which I'd say use a YouTube video for. Like, there are plenty of good YouTube videos for installing Arch. And when you get Arch installed, the next thing you got, I'd say you just go ahead and go on from there. Install a desktop environment you'd like. Let's say you prefer gaming, then I'd say install maybe a faster desktop environment, maybe a tiling window manager that isn't tiling window manager, maybe XFCE or whatever. So you type sudo pacman -s and then XFCE4, then you press enter and you get that desktop environment installed. Of course, you'd have to do some things. You'd have to get a session manager. Those are not hard to set up. I'd say get out the phone though, if you know what I mean. So you can actually get it installed properly, get the login manager set up properly and stuff. Usually, most login managers require you to start an Artist System CTL service. I use TBSM, and it's basically an executable, basically like a command. You just type in TBSM, press enter, in TTY, and it brings up like a little menu. You could choose to enter a desktop environment, or you could type in quit, and it literally gives you, and you could shove like a little easy piece of text into your .bash profile file, and that basically has it automatically start when you like log into your account. So that's So basically, Arch is more like a distro that's really tailored to you. Though it, though if you're a beginner, I'd use it as a last ditch resort if you can't find a distro that's tailored towards you. Because if you can't find a distro that's tailored towards you, you can go with Arch and watch a tutorial and install by command, and then just do what you need to do on here, like where pack, and you could literally just download where packages you need installed. So, quick rundown. If you want to use your distro for work, then I choose. If you're going to use it more for graphical design, I would choose good old. I would choose maybe either Ubuntu. I wouldn't really care about what distro you're going to use. It really wouldn't matter if you're going to do more graphical design, but if you're going to do more 3D, I'd say go with the distro that has compatibility and stuff. Is fast. Especially so that's a really big, like a lot of distros I can't include here. If you're going to use it for more office work, I'd say try Ubuntu. I'd say go with Ubuntu or any of its derivatives. But again, any distro should work, but that's for stability. But for the stability, I'd go with the Debian based distro, or Debian itself. If you want to use it for gaming, like I said, say no to the distros, those that are like the gamer pack distros. Distros, if you know what I mean, as well as SteamOS. Say no to those, and go with the distro, like I said, that's fast, and is known to be pretty good around for gaming, such as Pop! OS, or any other Ubuntu based distro, but Pop! OS would be the best out of the bunch of those, and Manjaro, those two. If there's any distros to stay away from, it's Gentoo into Slackware. Put that right there. Distros that are difficult to install, like extremely difficult, and require you to be more advanced, require you to have more advanced knowledge of Linux, and requires you to do way too much research. Distros that have lacking they don't have repositories, especially deep in, and the good one right here, I'm gonna put would be, I mentioned earlier, the gamer pack distros and SteamOS. If you don't got any idea up here, I'd say whip out your phone, go on YouTube, search up Arch Linux tutorial. I'm gonna drop a link down in the description to a good one I know that'll help you out. And then I'd say go from there. Let's still keep this fella around, if you know what I mean. So you can do some little research and stuff, and especially go on the Arch Wiki for installing packages and stuff, and what you need to do for certain packages if you need to do any. So this is Buildershed here. Hope to see y'all next time. See ya. If y'all like this type of content, make sure to drop a like. If you wanted to see more of this content, make sure to subscribe. If you don't like this content, or specifically this video, drop a dislike. And it'd be heavily appreciated if you were to also drop a comment explaining why you disliked the video and some issues, also known as constructive feedback. I'll see y'all next time. See ya.